Welcome back to another episode of George in the Jungle. I am Aaron Smith, joined as always by the esteemed one in a million George Vogel. But we are presented by Remington Tavern as always. Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have daily happy hours from 3 to 7 p.m. You can catch the $5 Woodford Wednesdays, and you can follow them on Instagram at Remitav, Remitav, Cincy with a Y, or follow them on Facebook. Well, George, last night was one for the ages, and I say that as it was only their eighth time, I believe eighth matchup ever against these Kansas Jayhawks. Not just the eighth time at Fog Allen, but I believe the eighth time only that these teams have ever matched up. Unfortunately, it did not go the way of the Bearcats as they fall in another conference matchup, 74-69. The score maybe a bit more indicative of I didn't feel the game was ever as close as the score showed, I guess.
It didn't feel like it, but they just wouldn't go away. And, you give UC credit for that because they kept hanging in there and hanging in there and hanging in there and hung in until the final. I mean, they made a little run to make it close there at the end. They covered the spread for those Bearcat bettors out there. But I think everyone from a UC standpoint on this thing was a little bit disappointed. The team played well in some aspects, but in other aspects, some old problems cropped up. The problems with the turnovers early that got them in the hole. The problem of getting the offense started early. That kind of happened in both halves. But outside of the UC perspective on this, I've had a lot of people who are fans of other teams who saw that game last night, and they were impressed with Cincinnati. And they think they've got a pretty darn good team. And when you look at 4 Big 12 losses by a total of 13 points, man, I mean, that's tough. And, we saw this 6-game stretch coming, and you were hoping against hope, I guess, they could go 3-3. I think people would have been satisfied with 3-3, 2-4. You're probably a little disappointed in that, especially as close as the games were that they dropped. And man, you look at the last 2 losses, Oklahoma and Kansas, and just kind of, to me, lack of good inside offense. And I think that can still be a strength of this team. But, Big Vic just didn't get it done in those games. And I'm thinking that's a guy that you got to park down there on offense a little more and go that route as opposed to, having him run around a little more on the perimeter and not post up down there. And his numbers 3 of 14 cumulative in those 2 games. And to me, they're not going to win games when Vic's, doing that. You got to get more out of him than that because, you're not getting a lot of help down there out of Aziz. He's more of a defensive presence. We see what the offensive game is, and if it isn't a lob or some kind of putback dunk, you're just not getting a lot out of him offensively down there. And that's why I think you got to establish Big Vic down there, and I would like to see them get back to that. Again, saying all that stuff, these games were close. These games came down to the wire, and they either one of those games could have conceivably gone the other way if UC makes some big shots down the stretch. Against Oklahoma, the issue was more at the free throw line when it came to shooting, although their overall percentage wasn't good. Last night, what did it end up? Was it 3 of 18 from 3? Am I remembering that right? I didn't.
3 of 18 for 16.7%.
Yeah, that's in today's college basketball game. That's not going to that's not going to help you. That's not going to get you wins, and certainly it didn't help them last night.
Yeah, you mentioned the streak of games, this gauntlet of games, as Cincinnati has faced now 6 ranked opponents in a row. The first time since 93-94 that they've had to face such a stint. That was on the broadcast last night. I didn't find that stat on my own. I'll give credit where credit's due there. But this team's Chad brought up the word funk last night, and Coach about lost his mind. He doesn't like that word funk. But it's hard. Oh, Chad's here.
Oh my gosh. You're back from Kansas.
That wasn't me. That was somebody else. I didn't say anything about a funk.
I'll tell you what, I'll say it right now. There's a bit of a funk when it comes to shooting with this team.
That George Bogle, the WLWT George.
Me, baby. I'll say it. I'll take the heat because
we determined last night that was Brad Chindle from the Topeka Times.
Yeah, no relation.
But hey,
what?
I don't ask the tough questions in the press conference.
Right.
Throw softballs. That's what everybody says.
Yeah.
Do you recall the stat that I know I saw it somewhere today on Twitter, Chad? But the stat that is, other than Dan Skillings, with the rest of the team in these away games is shooting from 3, 5 of
45, 11.
5 of 45. That's dreadful.
Oh, it's atrocious. And you've got a guy like Lukosius who's supposed to be able to shoot the 3 a little bit.
Yeah.
And
he can shoot it at home. He can't shoot it on the road.
I agree with Wes after the game last night when he said, you don't want to trash your players when you're the coach, and nor would you ever expect him to. But they had some open looks. They had some good looks at the bucket. And if you're going to win the game, you got to make those shots. And I felt like Seamas had some really good looks that
wide open.
You got to make. Right. You got to make the offense. And I know I banged on the offense a little bit. I feel like Vic's got to get the ball down low more. I'm sorry. I just feel like he does.
They threw it to him twice with a point guard on him, and he never got a shot off.
Well, you can't. That can't happen. That can't happen.
They threw it to him. He didn't. Wow. He had 2 1-inch from the rim that he missed.
Right.
He had 2 turnovers with a point guard on it.
Well,
they're throwing it to him. You think it's not working because he's not scoring.
Well, in my opinion, they don't have anyone else that can do it down there, though.
Jamil had a nice.
You can't.
Jamil had a nice.
Z's.
Jamil had a nice post move yesterday.
And Reynolds, you throw it down to him, and you got to make sure his footwork's okay, or he's going to travel.
Well, he does have.
I think we saw another one of those last night.
I had a great line sitting there at the game. Aziz traveled before he missed the layup, and I said, "Well, that's one way you don't miss a layup is you travel before you shoot the layup." So then
the ball over.
You didn't miss the layup.
Yeah, then it's just one of the 18 turnovers or whatever they have. Oh God, that killed them early in the game too. That was, I think if I heard Billis say one more time, these turnovers are killing Cincinnati. I'm like, yeah, they were killing them all right.
Thanks, Jay.
That's the frustrating part about this for all of us is that they show they're good enough to do this. They show they're good enough to hang with these teams, if not, knock them off. But they're not getting it done because of those mistakes like that.
Well, this was another game. You mentioned some of the things coming back that have been haunting them in some of their earlier games. This is another game where they gave up a career high to the leading scorer on the other team. As right. Johnny Furphy from Australia, his parents were in town from down under. Yeah. And he put on quite a show for them as he finishes with 23 points, 11 rebounds, a double-double. And that's frustrating, especially when you hold Hunter Dickinson, who's arguably their best player, 10 points, 6 rebounds.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job on him, I would say, definitely. As for the Australian, the old man looked like he was straight out of the Outback last night. My hair's starting to get like his was, but and then poor him. They had that high angle shot of him. You could see that big bald spot in the middle of all that long hair. But you know, they came in, they saw their young man have a big night, and he did have a big night. What I didn't like what UC did is the flip side of that when he was on defense. And you know, UC, when they were moving the ball around, Kansas was switching a lot. Wes talked about that after the game. When you get some of those matchups after the switches, and a couple times, like the first time Skillings was in, and you know, Furphy ends up on him, he roasted him.
Was that the dunk?
Yeah.
Was that okay?
And I think he had it all over him. And I think UC should have taken a little more advantage of that too, because they were switching constantly. And as Chad said, you know, you got a point guard on Vic down low because of all that switching. And they did not exploit that the way I think you got to do it. And that's, you know, I don't think it takes a whole lot of basketball smarts to recognize that, but they didn't seem to recognize that a whole lot.
It was almost as if they were surprised by the matchups and didn't know what to do with them when they got them, right? When they got the ones that would have benefited the guy with the ball. Cincinnati was just kind of like, I'm going to pass it.
And I've got to believe the coaches were pounding that in on them too. And they've got to be, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a confidence thing, a comfortability thing, but you've got to take advantage of that when it happens. And when you play a team like that switches up like that, and they were doing it nonstop. I mean, it was just all over the place. When you get that matchup like that, you got to go. You just got to go. And more often than not, if you don't get the bucket, you're drawing a foul.
Yeah, it's quite a situation right now that they're in, where they've found themselves not just in these games, but unable to do what it takes to actually to win these games. It's I don't know. It's weird. It's almost like the Marvin Lewis era, where he was unable to get over the hump of winning a playoff game, right? Where he was able to get to the game, but he was never able to close out these games.
Yeah, and they look so good at times too. I mean, they really do. They look like a team, and I do feel like they've gotten better as the season has progressed. You know, you think about, you know, once they got Bandago and Reynolds on boards and things started going their way a little bit, then they missed CJ last night.
Sure.
They missed him a lot. You know, and I don't know when they're going to get him back. I guess they're hinting maybe a couple more weeks. You hate to have to rely on one guy like that, but when you've got a shooter like that and your other shooters are struggling, that's just another option that would be at their disposal on a night where they're looking for something. And you know, more often than not, one of those options is going to heat up a little bit, and you know they're down one on that, but still, I just feel like really some missed opportunities here when you start putting it together with the Baylor game, the Texas game, the Oklahoma game, and now the Kansas game last night. It's tough to let go of that and not think what could have been, and they would be in real good shape if they had gotten one or two more of those wins, as far as, you know, where they are in the net and all those rankings and what the committee looks at the end of the year. And so, you know, you got to win some of these if you expect to get in.
I agree. It's becoming extremely frustrating because it feels like every game there's something different to point out that they're doing well that they didn't do the previous game, but it's these other two things start to rear their head now.
Yeah, and as the comment says, they need a dude. Give me the ball and I'll go score. And I feel like the two guys with the attitude like that are Day and Jizzle. And, you know, they're probably not your best shooters on the team. And we know what the struggles have been finishing the layups, but they do have a little bit of that attitude, and they'll attack, you know, anyone at any time. I think they're only going to get better, but they're just not there yet.
Yeah, I think Dan's got a little of that in him as well. And unfortunately, it's falling right now on CMOS, and he's cold. He's not the guy that you want shooting right now.
Yeah, and I saw him play some games at Butler where he was he was phenomenal. And I had one game that sticks out was, the game he torched Xavier. And when he gets it going, but he just couldn't get it going. And Chad pointed out it's been a road issue with him, but you got to find a way to get past that. And we'll see if they can kick it in gear now. They got a Central Florida team coming in that seems to be Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, they beat Kansas. I think they beat Texas, right? They were beating West Virginia, which is no great shakes, but they were taking care of business at home tonight against the Mountaineers. So I expect all game Saturday.
They beat West Virginia by 13, but we've also seen them against Houston.
Oh yeah,
having an atrocious offense.
Right. Oh, they are kind of Jekyll and Hyde right now. They really are, and I don't know who's going to show up at Fifth Third Arena. Which one was the? I guess I want Mr. Hyde. He was the ugly one, right?
Yeah, you want Houston UCF, not Kansas UCF.
Exactly. But back to you talked about Skillings and being that guy. He did that in the first half when he entered that game for UC.
He did.
You can't expect him to carry that huge load the entire game, but I wish he would have. I wish he would have asserted himself in that second half like he did the first and kept it going. But overall, that kid had a good game last night, and he's shown those flashes. You got to get that consistency out of him because, the game before, he didn't play so well.
Yeah, we've joked about, Stetson Dan versus Dayton Dan. Dayton Dan, Stetson Dan, I think, evolved into Baylor Dan, and Baylor Dan, we saw some evolution into Kansas Dan, and Kansas Dan unfortunately wasn't able to finish.
Right.
He got kind of stuck loading somewhere in between, just stuck on a loading screen there. But
whatever they got to do to get Vic going down low and whatever's going on there, maybe they got to do what Bobby Knight said he did to that Reed kid that time about 30 years ago when someone asked what they did at halftime to get him going in the second half, and he mentioned something about a hot poker going somewhere and hot water going down the throat. Oh, yeah. Bobby Knight did go there. But they got to figure out a way to get him mean down there and aggressive and wanting the ball down there and wanting to put it in because the dude's got a nice touchdown there.
Yeah, he took 14 shots, was 6 of 14 in this one, as opposed to 3 shots in the previous game where he was 0 for. So it's, I don't know. I appreciate his aggressiveness in this one as opposed to on Saturday against Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Just unfortunately not quite enough to get the job done.
Dan didn't do much in that one. So, look, like I said, they've gotten better over the last month. They got to get over this hump, and I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I kind of feel like some of it is. They've got to get it going, but I also, and a buddy of mine today talked about this. Maybe a little more of Vic down low and staying with that, as opposed to having Aziz down there doing whatever he's doing.
11 rebounds
better spent with Vic down there.
Yeah, Aziz had 11 rebounds, 6 points. Vic had 8 rebounds, 7 points. I mean, Cincinnati, as far as rebounding goes, they out-rebounded Kansas, and I think this is probably the only reason they were still in the game. They out-rebounded them by 11 at 40-29.
Did a really good job on the boards. And we're happy with that, given what happened in that Oklahoma game. But Oklahoma does that to you. The UC is not the first team. It's not like they killed them on the boards, but I'm not used to seeing UC get beat on the boards. And when they do, it really feels bad.
when you're getting 16 offensive rebounds, though, you got to be scoring on those.
Yep. Those are supposed to be golden opportunities. And, I think they won the second half or the second chance points, but not by enough. I mean, not given what the margin was for the number of rebounds they had off the offensive glass. It should have been more than what it was.
I agree. I know you mentioned Day and Jizzle. I thought they both had. I know I've been critical at times this season of Day. It seems Day's kind of turned a corner in these last couple games. I still think it's okay. I know that Chad disagrees with this take. I think it's okay to start a hot hand, especially in college as opposed to the pros. I think that when Jizzle was hot earlier this season, if you had started him, I don't think it would have wrecked Day's confidence. That all said, they're both coming on to where I think they're both starting to find their roles, and I think that's nothing but a good thing for the team. And I don't know, it almost sucks that Day was in foul trouble yesterday. I know there was a couple different times where I was looking for Cincinnati to score, and I'm like, why isn't Day on the court? And that's maybe the first time this season where I've actually felt like that.
Yeah, and he looked pretty darn good last night in my opinion. A lot of people or some people or someone I was with last night had a different opinion on that, but I'm telling you, he's explosive. He made some shots. I wish he was a little better from three. We know that's an issue all year, but still, he and Jizzle both have a pretty good pull-up jumper from the intermediate range that's, tough for anyone to guard. So, look, there's still hope. And there's another mention in the comments about CJ, which we talked about earlier. And anytime you got a guy like that can, give you another option, you would love to have him. You would love to have him. And if CMOS doesn't have it and CJ does, you give the minutes to the guy who's got it that night. And, I know when they started the second half, too, they went with the original starting lineup. And I thought Skilling should have been out there, but I think he came in fairly quickly. But that kind of goes back to what you were saying with the hot hand that's starting them. Especially a team like this with so many options, I don't think you have to have the same starting five every game. I know sometimes it helps for guys to have roles and all that. Well, you can still have kind of the same role. It doesn't matter. And as one of the coaches always said, it doesn't matter who starts a game, it's who finishes. And that's true too. But I think whoever the guys you lean on in crunch time are the guys you should probably lean on for the majority of the game.
Yeah, no, Phyllis here, her husband Bob went on the trip with Chad to Kansas. But the changes I think that if CJ was available is Dan Skillings probably isn't the only person who makes a three-pointer on this team outside of the 11 missed threes by your starters and an additional one missed three by Jizzle. But when a team finishes 3 of 18, I would think that CJ Frederick makes that three-point shot, maybe not something that the defense is just willing to give you all night.
Yeah. No, in fact, I noticed this early in the season with him. I mean, just his threat and everything kind of changes things. And coaches talk about spacing and this and that, but he helps that a lot when he's out there. That's a guy you have to account for because the three can kill you and he can make the three and he can make it at a high level when he's on. And we've seen it in a couple games this year. And, what a shame that he got hurt again. I feel really, really bad for him because that's haunted him through his entire career. And I hope he gets healthy and can stay healthy and maybe enjoy a nice run here once he gets back. But we'll see because I feel really bad for kids who can play at that level, but for whatever reason, their body's just not letting them. And injuries are a huge part. Staying healthy is the biggest part of anybody's career. I mean, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you can't stay healthy, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't go out there and play. And I really hope he's able to get back and get back in the groove with this team, because not just for him, the team could use him, and they could have used him last night, no doubt.
Well, as you alluded to earlier, UCF comes to town on Saturday. Tip-off is at 7 p.m. How important is this game for Cincinnati to win with UCF coming to town on Saturday?
That's very important. It's a home game. It's a team I gotta believe they're going to be, they're going to be favored in. You got to win these games at home, and they've already lost to Oklahoma and Texas at home, and winning home games is so big in a conference like this. You've got to protect the home floor as best you can if you want to have a pretty good record in the conference at the end of the year and get the attention of the committee. So, does it kill the season? No, they could still go on a really good run in February, but you've got to beat UCF at home. And I know, unfortunately, that's a team that can jump up and get you, as Kansas found out. So UC's got to be ready. They've got to come out. They've got to put this behind them. And the only good thing about playing on Monday night after you played on a Saturday is now you got an extra day before you go into that game on Saturday. And hopefully UC puts that to good use, because they really need to win this game.
Well, February doesn't get much easier. You have UCF on Saturday. You have West Virginia following that up. And then in February, you have at Texas Tech. You are hosting Houston. You actually have Houston twice in February. But you're hosting Houston. You are hosting Iowa State, who's also currently ranked. And I believe Texas Tech is 20. So you have 3 more ranked games potentially in a row. Three more in a row after having the 6 in a row. And then at UCF, hosting Oklahoma State, at TCU, who may or may not be ranked at that point, and then at Houston to finish up February.
That's a brutal stretch.
February is still also tough. There is no easy stretch. You might have your easiest.
The easiest stretch on there is the next 2 games, in my opinion,
Right.
And one of those is on the road.
Right.
But that's this conference. I'll tell you what, I'll take that over what they've been through the last 10 years.
Agreed.
Every single year, it's so much more fun. It gives you so many more opportunities for a quality win. So it's tough, but that's what you want to do. Those are the games you want to play, and it's going to make you better. And hopefully this stretch they're coming out of 6 games where they played okay. I mean, yeah, I beat them up on the turnovers and the shooting and stuff, but they were in those games, and hopefully that made them better, and they're going to be ready for this stretch. Because, yeah, it doesn't get any easier as you go along in this season.
Yeah, time will tell, and obviously we're all thoroughly enjoying the ride. Some of us more than others, as you were able to make the game last night, Chad.
It was fun. That place is awesome. Like,
I wish I could have gone. God, it was. Yeah, I couldn't.
It's so old, and I know a couple of the people that were there, like, this place is a dump. No, it's historical. It's a shrine to college basketball. It is an awesome place to watch a game, and that place got loud. I mean, there was one point towards the end of the game, I was talking to Keegan, and we couldn't hear each other, and he was sitting right next to me.
Yeah, it looked dirty on television too. I mean, that it looked like a tremendous atmosphere, and look, there are parts of Fenway Park that you would look at and say it's a dump, but it's a shrine. The same with Wrigley.
Here's my thing. These are the same people that love Nippert Stadium.
Exactly. And I'll tell you what, we all love Nippert. A game there is the best.
You get to go to one of the birthplaces of the sport of basketball and watch a game.
You look at the history in that building and that program, and then you look at Bill Self's record there. What he's lost 17 games, right? His entire
21 years.
Yeah,
he's lost 17 games at Allen Fieldhouse.
Insane.
I said this to Lance last night. I did a hit on WLW. I've never done even the things I do incredibly well. I've never done any of those things at a 94% success rate.
No,
None of us have.
No,
there's nothing in my life that I have successfully done 94% of the time.
I've done things wrong 94% of the time, but yeah,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
right.
right.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
He also coming off a loss in
Yeah.
21 years has lost 16 times. He's only
So-
lost in 21 years. He's only lost back-to-back games 16 times.
Yeah, the deck was stacked, no doubt about it when you look at it that way. But man, what an opportunity it was, and
So
well, it'll make them better. I hope. I just hope they're ready for the rest of this season and all this experience they've gotten in this 6-game stretch. It didn't kill them, so hopefully it makes them stronger.
this league, Texas 75, Oklahoma 60 tonight in Norman.
Yeah,
And right now, Oklahoma State is beating the brakes off of TCU.
is that right?
Here
It's
comes
landmine after landmine, and I love it because it reminds us of that old Big East when UC joined that, and it's.
Here's the difference, though, for me, George. That old Big East was amazing. Don't get me wrong. But St. John's stunk. Seton Hall was not good. USF was terrible. DePaul was terrible. Like there were catch your breath.
Yeah, there were layups. There were layups
In that league. That doesn't exist here.
Well, I was thinking maybe UCF might be sort of a layup earlier this year, but because they lost some games in non-conference that you're like, okay, you can catch your breath against that. Then they go beat Kansas and Texas. It's like, no, you can't. You can't.
West Virginia looks terrible. They beat Kansas. Oklahoma State hasn't won a game. They're I think it's 26-12 or 20. They're up 14, 15 points there's 10 minutes left in the first half.
I wonder how many teams looked at Cincinnati the same way, though, where they lost against any good opponent they played and they're out of conference. And going into conference play, I think they've probably surprised the hell out of some teams.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so. And I would say, you can start right with Baylor down there in that game.
For sure.
They gave them everything they could handle and could have gotten out of there with a win.
29-14, Oklahoma State up on Texas or TCU with 7:43 left in the first half.
I was kind of hoping TCU would only lose one game the rest of the way. And that's when UC went down there because they could use those quality wins,
I mean, they looked awesome.
Right.
And now they're crumbled. They beat Houston. They beat Oklahoma. Like they had one of the best week. They had the best week in the country. And
I expect Jamie Dixon will get them back on track.
They got smoked Saturday.
Yep. I think teams go through this stuff. Teams go through these laws where no one can explain it. I don't know why it happens. And then it's like somebody snaps their fingers and they're back on again and dangerous as ever.
I do have a question. Is Rob Riggle a big enough star to be the guy that does the hype video to start the under 4 timeout at the end of the game for Kansas?
Not to me.
Rob Riggle.
Is that
They
bad?
went nuts. They put Rob Riggle on the screen. Everybody lost their mind.
Is he the actor guy they showed on ESPN? Is that the same?
Yes.
So I'm not an actor guy. I can't tell you who. I mean, since the days of John Wayne and some of those people, anything past the mid 80s, I don't know any of these people. I don't. You could put actors or actresses. I mean, I might know Tom Cruise and that guy, DiCaprio, those guys, but that's about anyone that's recent. I have no clue who these people are.
According to IMDb, he is best known for The Hangover, 21 Jump Street, Dumb and Dumber. He was in Step Brothers. Just a lot of those comedies that came out.
But he's your main guy.
I saw The Hangover. What character was he in that? Do you know? Was he the dentist?
No, I don't know. He was certainly not one of the main characters. I don't recall his role in The Hangover.
Phyllis said you should have gone, George. Phyllis, The only reason Bob got to go is because George couldn't. If George
we
would have
could have made
been, we wouldn't have
accommodation
room
for
for Bob.
Maybe that's why she wishes George went.
Yeah, I had an unfortunate situation where I couldn't go and shouldn't have gone, but maybe the next time. How long was that drive? 12 hours?
9.
Okay. I just made it last spring and I couldn't remember, but I was with Slaughter, so we were stopping every 20 miles to eat. So that that added time to the trip.
It was 9 with stops. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
Good. Good.
It was foggy. I've never seen it was foggy from Kansas City to Cincinnati.
Well, I was thinking about you guys this morning when I saw that radar, and I'm like, that thing looks like almost rain all the way from Kansas City, or certainly as you got, closer to this side of Missouri, all the way home. That's brutal driving in that.
It wasn't fun.
Were you driving? You drove the bus?
I drove the first shift, and then Bob took a shift, and then I drove the rest of the way.
Okay, nice. Well, you made
I understand you had more important things to take care of. You would have had a blast. We had a great time.
Oh, I know. Now, did that bottle come back empty you took, or is there some
There's
left?
like this much left.
Oh, okay.
We did open it last night and enjoyed it. But then we got to bed at 3 a.m. because we didn't get back until after midnight, and then had to do a live show, and then wanted to enjoy each other's company and hang out for a little bit. And then we looked and it was like 3 a.m. It was like, oh,
time to hit.
Probably should try to sleep.
I would have tried to finish that bottle for you, though.
We were on the road by 9.
Oh, yeah. After being up till 3, and if you're drinking that, that can be rough. That can be rough. But you did. What impressed you most about that arena? Was it just the atmosphere and the crowd, or was there?
The thing was like everything
big,
was
right.
It's
bigger than
over 16,000.
Yeah.
Everything was. You can tell they've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
Like they knew every bit. They knew every gag. They knew everything that went up on the scoreboard. They knew when they did their chants, when they did that. Like it was a well-oiled machine. Some of the video stuff looked like they had been doing it since the 90s.
Yeah.
Like it just was one of those things where the student section, it looked like, you see football games, the students are there an hour and a half before the game and it's full. Student section was full an hour and a half before the game. I think Keegan joked that Rayvon comes out and does a workout like before the team comes out. Like as soon as they arrive, Rayvon and Coach Morgan do a workout, and it was the most people that had ever seen Ray in college, because here was Ray working out, and here's 1,000 Kansas students sitting like on the other side of the basket. They had this hall of champions that
the history's unbelievable with that.
It was awesome.
UC hasn't played them more over the years, given the two programs, where they've been, what they've done, where they're located. It's a shame that they haven't really crossed paths, I don't believe, in conferences until now.
I have good news for you, George.
Yes.
So do you remember Joe Dooley?
Yes.
The head coach for East Carolina.
Yes.
So I've gotten to know him over the years out at AAU events. Antoine Jackson, who was with Mick for a long time,
right,
coached at ECU after he left Cincinnati. So whenever I'd see Antoine, he would be with Joe Dooley. So I got to know Joe Dooley pretty well. I didn't realize he was back at Kansas for his second stint as an assistant.
How about that?
So I'm standing there, and here comes Joe. I'm like, what are you doing, buddy? Like, I didn't even realize you were back. Good to see you. Like, we talked for a minute, and I mentioned that, we had stayed in Kansas City coming out for the trip, and he said, hey, call me. I got a buddy that has an awesome Airbnb in Lawrence. Call me next time, and we'll set it up so you can come out. And
so we might be able to do this next year. I like it. So another quick question. I don't want to get too far off track here, but when you look at the game last night, like how good is Kansas? Because they don't get a lot of bench help. So
they might have the best like top 4 in the country, but they don't have anything behind it.
Right. That's what worries me about them as you look long term. Not that I'd stay worried about the Jayhawks. I got enough to worry about. But if you talk about a deep run, they're going to need some help, I think.
Hold on a second, George. I want to read you something.
Okay.
This is starting December 3rd, okay? Home against Houston, road Kansas State, home Baylor, road Texas Tech, road Oklahoma, home Texas, home BYU, road Baylor, home Kansas State, road Houston. That's February to the end of the season for Kansas.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Where's the gimme?
Help, man.
Where's the gimme?
There isn't. They're going to need some bench help.
That's like a month and a half of top 30 teams.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What's that like?
We got 6 games, and look how we reacted to it.
I know, but now it's like a 2-game break, and I don't even consider it a break. And then
Aaron, that's a 10-game stretch.
Yeah,
one of these teams is the number 7 team in the country, and the other isn't. So good luck.
Not going to be at the end of the season with those 10 games.
Show us that you were supposed to be in the top 10.
Yeah. Well, now, yeah, they're going to have that chance. That's insane. Bill Self's got to wonder who he PO'd at the league office on that one.
So we were getting ready to leave, and I was taking a leak before we left because we had a long, 40-minute drive back home, and they had the schedule on the wall, and I'm just standing there looking at it going, oh, God. Oh, God.
And at your age, you would have been at that urinal long enough to see next year's schedule, too. What's that look like?
Yeah. Nope. They put number 4, number 15, number 20, number 11, number 21, number 15, and number 4 over that 10-game stretch.
It'll all change before it gets to it.
Yes, Aaron, that's how it works. I'm well
aware. Oh, yeah, it will. But that's way more brutal than any stretch you're going to get in really a conference tournament and an NCAA tournament. You're not going to run through a stretch like that. I mean, at least in the first couple rounds, you're not going to be playing people that are ranked that high if you're a Kansas and have a decent seed. So that's going to be rougher than anything they've probably faced in a long time.
Kansas State and Texas are the only unranked teams they play in that stretch, and they're both quality.
Right there.
Quality.
Yep. Awesome. I'm glad that's their problem and not UC's, but UC's task is daunting enough.
Yeah. All right. I'll let you guys finish up, but it was a great
time. I'm glad you got back safe and had fun, too.
Have you been to Joe's Barbecue?
I don't think so. I think I was at another one, like right on the edge of downtown Kansas City. Is that where's Joe's?
Joe's is in Midtown.
Because I went to a place that, I'm telling you, it was a throwback. It was like in the 50s.
Oh, this is throwback. Yeah.
I wonder if it's the same place. God,
burnt ends were incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. It was so good.
I had these burnt ends that they had that were so good.
That's what I just said.
That might be it. Maybe I was there. I don't know. I can't remember the name of this place.
Chad, you'll have to excuse him. He's getting old. It's fine.
I just said that. I said the burnt ends were amazing, and you were like, I had these burnt ends.
Oh,
they were good.
I was off in my own little world trying to figure out if I'd been to Joe's. Maybe I have been.
Chad, before we get on to this next topic, as we switch gears here, is it Tyson? Is it Vite?
Vite.
Vite, I think.
That's the way I heard it pronounced. Tyson Vite.
All right. Just wanted to know before you left. I thought maybe you'd have some intel on how to pronounce this guy's name.
Yeah, I'm gathering intel currently on him and everything as we speak. Hopefully I will have a little bit more in terms of what exactly he's going to coach, what the situation is going to look like a little more in detail tomorrow for the BBP.
BCJ.
For the BCJ pod. I'm so confused.
I got you.
My brain is fried right now.
I'm not the only one that's old.
And not just because there are a lot of places along the highway to stop in Missouri and Illinois.
Oh my gosh. That's a brutal drive. It's brutal.
So as I kind of change subjects to Tyson Vite is your new defensive coordinator. Of course, Brian Brown left last week to head back to his alma mater, Ole Miss, and that left that position vacant. It is filled as of today. Tyson Vite was at Iowa State since 2016. He is a guy with Ohio roots. He's from Logan, Ohio, which is actually just north of Athens, where my significant other is actually from.
Wow.
My lady friend graduated from the same high school.
She ought to be able to get some intel then.
I asked her. She said that he graduated long enough ago that it was before her time. He graduated. I think he graduated in '92. So
he's old to you, but a pup to me.
I mean, he's got a decade on both she and I. So, but he is a linebackers coach at Iowa State. He was ranked really highly, enough to be a finalist for the Broyles Award. And Football Scoop had him as the linebacker coach of the year in 2017. He had 3 different times, all 3 starting linebackers earned all Big 12 honors. I believe he had 2 All-Americans in his stint there. But quite a track record for a guy in the Big 12 just as a simple linebackers coach.
Yeah, if you look at the resume, I like it. I like the fact that even though it wasn't, at the Division I level, if I remember correctly, but he's been a defensive coordinator. He's also got some head coaching experience.
Correct.
And it's done a little bit of everything and then settled into this role with Coach Campbell, followed him out to Iowa State. And, excuse me, seems to have done a great job there.
Yeah, as a head coach, he was actually the assistant head coach at Iowa State as well.
Which tells me, they bump him up with the title for more money because they didn't want him going anywhere, and he probably had some other opportunities. So it looks like his track record is very solid as a coach. Having Ohio roots is a plus around here, in my opinion. He probably has a pretty good handle on
the head coach,
the recruiting landscape in Ohio, even though, I've read some stuff, good and bad, about the recruiting aspect of it, but I like the hire.
The head coach, he was head coach at Bluffton from 2008 to 2013. Of course, that's not D1, but it's still head coaching experience. And then he was also DC at St. Vincent from 2006 to 2007 and Muskingum from 2000 to 2003.
And there's been some really, really successful college coaches that come out of that kind of a pedigree, and especially around here in this area. And, there's a lot of them you can point to. There's a ton of them. And I mean, I could start naming them, but you do not diminish, the head coach of the Eagles came through the Mount Vernon pipeline and things like that. Brian Kelly was at Grand Valley State as a head coach. And I just think no matter what your role is at Division I, if you're somewhere else at a D3 or D2 and get some head coaching experience, I think it's invaluable. And so, I think his career path, to me, suggests that he's more than ready for it and can have some success in this role. I don't know the guy. I'd like to talk to some people who have worked with him, but obviously Iowa State, Matt Campbell thought a lot of this guy, and his track record out there looks pretty darn good. And I think he was going to be in line, if the defensive coordinator out there moved on or retired. He was the heir apparent to take over as defensive coordinator there. And you talk about some smash mouth, down and dirty, just rugged defense. Iowa State's had it over the years.
Yeah, I know there was something mentioned in the way of him being involved in recruiting.
Yeah, he was a recruiting coordinator, and I don't know if he was there. He may have been at Toledo. I can't remember now. I was looking at his record earlier, his resume. But there were no, and I've seen some other stuff on him online, interviews with him, things like that, where he sounds and looks the part. We'll see if he's a fit here. But boy, I'll tell you what, out of all the speculation and everything, I never heard the name Tyson Vite until today when word leaked out that he was going to be the guy.
Well, and to kind of piggyback on that, I think it's kind of shows you just how deep this search went in the fact that Coach got out of his Appalachian State tree and looked elsewhere. And I think that the fact that he has been a part of the Big 12 since even before Cincinnati was part of the Big 12, I think that's nothing but a good thing because he has clearly years of familiarity with the rest of the Big 12 that this staff just doesn't have. And
it makes me feel good about Satterfield. Look, that season sucked. Everyone was ready to hang him from, Shank Pavilion. But at the end of the year, he was not afraid to do some things. And if that meant change the entire defense when it comes to personnel, he changed a lot of that defense when it came to personnel. Did he want his coordinator to leave? No. But when he had to replace that guy, he didn't just go to some standard off-the-shelf hire. It sounds like and looks like he did his due diligence here and looked for the guy he thought was the best hire to make this team better. And it seems to me like Scott Satterfield has not been afraid to make some different decisions and maybe a little bit outside the box to try to turn this thing around quicker because, he knew as well as anyone it was a disaster last year. And so I like the fact that he's making what I consider some aggressive moves to change that.
Real quick, just want to thank Phyllis for the $9.99 donation. We do appreciate it, Phyllis.
She says it's the German pronunciation Vite, if it's the German pronunciation, but it is Vite. So he must have some good old Ohio German in him somewhere.
There you go. But I don't know. I mean, this may be honestly the most important hire of Scott Satterfield's tenure at Cincinnati. This hire could honestly make or break his time here in Cincinnati.
When you consider how bad that defense was last year, that's got to get fixed.
Well, if it's the wrong guy, I mean, Scott's calling the offense, and this is he's not calling the defense. This is the guy he has to lean into. This is the guy who is carrying the other side of the ball for him as if he's going to get extended here or not. Everything kind of is important as far as this defensive hire goes. So I'm very curious to see if this means that anybody else on the defense is going to, as far as coaches go, if there's going to be any more changes, as he may want to bring in a guy or two of his own. So we'll see how that shakes. And I don't know. Time will tell there, but.
And I know, it's strange to say, but what are we, a month and a half from spring ball getting ready to crank up? And people get antsy about that, but I think there's still time to shake all that out. I mean, it really is. They'll start installing that stuff in the spring and seeing who they like, who they don't. But, if he does want to make a change or two, I still think there's time you can do it.
He is bringing the 3-3-5 though, as we understand, and I believe it's not going to be quite the same as what Brian Brown had. From what I've been reading, the linebacker, one of the linebackers, and one of the joker position is going to be a little bit different under his system compared to Brian Brown. So we'll see, and I'm sure we'll get plenty more information as the new DC settles into his new role here, and we kind of get to hear from the horse's mouth, if you will.
Yeah, hopefully we hear from him soon. Be interesting.
Not the only coordinator here, as the Bearcats are not the only team that we cover here on this show, but not the only coordinator who changed positions, as Brian Callahan is no longer the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. He moves on and is now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. For a guy who, honestly, I don't know what he did here. I was surprised that his name was even being floated around and ballyhooed about as it was. I will be completely honest. I've followed the Bengals less since I started covering the Bearcats, but when your head coach is making the large majority of your decisions and you're a guy who's working out of the booth as opposed to being down on the field, it's a strange role that Brian Callahan played in this Bengals offense.
Yeah, they put I'm sure in concert with Zach Taylor, put the game plans together and how they were going to attack the defenses coming in. But yeah, Zach called the plays. But when you're working, that NFL coaching community is kind of tight knit, and I kind of think of it like I did when I was doing what I did in television and in broadcasting and stuff. If you can find out everything you need to know about a guy before you hire him. You may have never heard of this guy before. You may have never talked to this guy before, but people who have that you trust. And I feel like this is one of those deals where inside that NFL coaching bubble, Brian Callahan has a lot of respect because it wasn't just the Titans going after him this time around.
Right.
I think he kind of, he was in Denver and then he,
Carolina.
He had some success with some quarterbacks that he worked with. Now they're going to expect him to maybe work a little magic with Will Levis and see if that works. Try to find out if he's the guy. If he's not, you got to go get another one. But people know in the NFL among the coaches who operates in what way, how they operate, and if that's, a guy who more than likely is for you. Doesn't guarantee success, but it does give you more of a window than what it looks like to us. They know more about Callahan before they're signing him than anybody outside the NFL knows. So, we'll see. I really thought when you looked at the last 3 years and the coordinators' names being thrown around, I thought Anarumo would get a job as a head coach before Callahan would. But then you look at this year the Bengals had and the big plays given up by the defense. And it's kind of a blessing for the Bengals in disguise that they're not losing both of them, because that happened to Marvin, I believe, once. And that's asking for trouble. And you don't want to, and I would love for Lou to get a head coaching job somewhere. I really think a lot of that guy. But it's Brian's turn. It's his time. The Bengals have had a lot of stability since Zach came in on that coaching staff. It was going to happen sooner or later. Looks like it's happening now. And now it's, where do the Bengals turn to? Do they have somebody in-house they trust? My guess is they probably do. And that may be what they end up doing, but who knows? Zach may have a name that he knows at another organization. And these guys, this Zach's not getting blindsided by this. He's probably, had guys in mind for the past couple of years. If Brian moves on, who do I have on my short list that could come in here and I could trust to run this offense and help myself and help Joe Burrow keep things rolling along on the offensive side of the ball. So it's very interesting. good for Brian Callahan. I guess things went sideways with Mike Vrabel down there with the ownership group and all that, because I saw somewhere today where some people around the Titans were like, the monarchy's over now. So I guess that they were referring to Mike Vrabel as trying to run the thing like a king. And I guess, he wore out his welcome a little bit, because I still think he's a darn good coach. So it's interesting and good for Callahan. And what this does to the Bengals, I don't know. You still have Zach, you still have Joe Burrow, and a lot of times Joe's the final say on some of those plays. And he has the trust and the ability to change these plays. So I'm sure there will be some changes, but the bigger changes is what's going to happen with the player personnel, what receivers are going to be back, and what other changes we may see in the off season there. But good for Brian Callahan. But you're right, his role here, kind of a bit of a mystery when you're an offensive coordinator who doesn't call plays. And you look at Eric Bieniemy was in the same situation for years out in Kansas City.
Sure, absolutely.
And people, thought he was the next big head coach to be hired, and that kind of held him back a little bit. I think people were a little gun shy about that he worked for a guy like Andy Reid, who was so hands-on with that offense, and he still hasn't gotten that shot. So it's going to be interesting to see, but Callahan was a great guy here. I can do nothing but root for him and wish him the best taking over Tennessee. I mean, he's got the pedigree when it comes to his background and what his dad did, and he grew up to be a coach, and now's his time, and he's getting it at a pretty young age. So good for him. We'll see how it works out, but you have success like the Bengals have had. You're lucky to hang on to the coordinators as long as you have.
Yeah, you mentioned somebody being in-house. I know one of the names being pitched around by a lot of people is Dan Pitcher.
Yep.
Not trying to use the
same
word.
Play on words.
Didn't mean to do that. But he's one of the names that they are kicking around, I guess, as he is the quarterback's coach currently. I believe the prior quarterback's coach that ended up going to Cleveland, I forget his name.
Gosh, you're killing me now. Yeah.
The Alex Van Pelt, was that it?
Yeah, that's right.
I think he's also currently jobless. If they were looking to bring a guy back, as far as guys with Cincinnati ties, because he was here, just 2 seasons ago, I believe.
Correct. I think you're right. Yes.
So that honestly that's a name that I haven't seen anybody floating around yet, but I would not be shocked at all if he ended up either. I don't know that Dan Pitcher brings him back in to be your quarterback's coach, if in any case.
But I mean, honestly, that if they've got an attractive spot for someone who's an up and comer.
Sure.
Yeah. When you're working with that personnel, you don't have to settle. They should be able to get the man they want. And if the man they want is in-house, that's fine. I get it. And there's some comfort and continuity there. But, and then there are guys, though, that may not want to work for somewhere where they don't call the plays.
That's where I offer you one Joe Brady. Joe Brady, if you remember, was the offensive coordinator for the LSU Tigers, the national champion LSU Tigers, while Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase were there. And I think that would be that's got to be the most intriguing hire to all Bengals fans, right?
Right. But I would think if it's going to be him, he's going to want to call the plays.
And I think, honestly, that solves a ton of problems here in Cincinnati.
Well, I think if I'm Zach Taylor, I'm okay with that.
There's no better way to step away from – this isn't you – honestly, this is probably the cleanest way for him to walk away from calling the plays, is to say, you know what? I'm going to give the plays. I'm going to give them. Not this isn't me stepping away because I'm not good at them, but I'm going to give them to the guy who probably knows these guys even better than I do.
Right.
Just saying.
Will that happen? I don't know, but it's an interesting thought. It really is.
It's a pipe dream, but I'm going to keep dreaming. I'm going to keep dreaming, George.
That earlier today too. I'm like, I wonder if Joe Brady, well, he would want to call the plays. I don't know if that's a fit here or not. But then if I'm Zach, I'm kind of okay with that because and Zach probably likes doing it and all that. But I'll tell you what, you got enough to do as a head coach.
Sure.
there's enough on your plate. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with. But certainly best of luck to Brian Callahan because look, they've got a lot of good guys in that building, and he was certainly one of them. He was good with the media and always cooperative and straight up. And so I think, I can wish him nothing but the best.
Probably doesn't hurt that his dad was a head coach as well. So
exactly. I mean, again, he's got that pedigree, and those guys, they know what it takes. They know what the toll is. They know what the commitment is, and he's all in.
Other NFL news, Travis Kelce, obviously he moves on in the playoff game that he was at. Jason Kelce might have actually stolen the spotlight from a man who did score 2 touchdowns in that playoff game.
Yeah, that was incredible. That was incredible.
I don't know if you knew. I don't know if you knew Zach Caleros was also, he was caught in a still, and he was actually in that booth as well.
And Craig Carey, elder grad, former UC quarterback and defensive lineman who had a huge interception playing defense in his career. Craig, at one point, there's a shot of, they show Taylor, and Craig is just casually like standing there 1 foot from her with his goofy big, he's got a big teethy smile with his big teethy smile. And I'm like, this guy, are you kidding me?
He had a shirt on, right?
Yeah, Craig, the only person that, did you see the text that got released from Jason's daughter to Kylie?
No, I did not.
Mom, I can see Dad's boobs.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'll tell you that it's unbelievable that
look,
when I think it can't get any crazier with those guys, it does.
Him jumping in and out of the suite might be the most athletic thing I've seen anybody do all year.
It was, yeah. Well, if you ask him, it was a lot easier than running that tush push play where the brotherly shove where he was always on the bottom of the pile.
Yeah, low man wins.
He had a funny way of talking about that when every time they called it, you probably saw that, what he yelled in the huddle.
Yeah.
I don't think he I know we talked about this a while back, and I didn't think he would like that play or appreciate that play. And I was glad to see he confirmed that.
And he is quietly going to be riding off into the sunset. And when I say quietly, I mean the exact opposite of that.
Yep, exactly. There ain't nothing quiet, but what a treasure. What an absolute treasure he is.
He is that, and we have him at least for one more week in the playoffs as we'll see what antics he has up his sleeve. I can't imagine that he will not be in attendance at the rest of the Kansas City Chiefs game. Well, I mean, if you're a conspiracy theorist like myself, you saw that the NFL has a referee crew going in that has given the away team the benefit of the doubt 60% of the time. This I don't know if it's I believe it's this season, so it's odd that they went with that as opposed to a crew like the rest of the crews that have gone roughly about 50-50. So we'll see. They at least have the referee percentages in their favor this time around. But the Baltimore's been ridiculous. That said,
yeah, I got to go with the Ravens. They're just on fire, and they're just not beating people but pounding people. I got to go with the Ravens. The other game, I bet a little bit on the Lions to win it all, just because I like kind of the momentum they had going, and
yeah,
it was a fairly nice number when it comes to odds. Do I really think they can do it in San Francisco? With that head coach, I'm not putting anything past them, and with the ability with those two running backs. And Deebo Samuel, I don't know if he's going to play. So let me just indulge myself and say the Lions will win that.
I hope so as well. But I believe that as things currently stand, Kansas City is the only team left with any of your Cincinnati Bearcats on the roster. So there is something
that's something I would like to root for, to be honest. But I just Baltimore's been playing so well.
I get it.
I mean, I really thought the Texans were playing well, would have a chance to hang in that game. Holy God. As soon as I thought, wow, Houston might hang in this battle, we saw it.
Well, one last thing that I want to bring up before we get out of here. We were talking about this before the show, and I wanted to bring it back up here. I'm almost sad that I brought it up before we started the show. But Alex Blandino for your Cincinnati Reds is going to be starting the season in Double-A. He is attempting to revamp his career now as a knuckleballer. Former first-round pick Alex Blandino, again, 31 years old, just completely disregarding the fact that he was an infielder. I think they even tried to move him into the outfield at one point, didn't really work out. But he's pitched as a Cincinnati Red in some garbage time. We've seen the knuckleball down at Great American Ballpark, but he is going to be starting the season in Double-A as a knuckleballer.
He must be impressing somebody with that knuckleball that they're doing this and giving him a clear shot at seeing what happens. So that will be interesting. And you know what? Why not? I mean, I don't know if there's any knuckleballers left currently in the major leagues, and they've been around a long time. And not many have been very successful, but the ones who have pitched forever. Like it's a
dying breed.
Yeah, you don't worry about blowing out a rotator cuff when you're throwing a knuckleball. And I would love to see it work. You know, he grinded and grinded, a former first-round pick, came out of college, just never quite stuck like a first-round pick you would hope would be able to stick and help your team. So maybe he can help them this way. But I give him 2 thumbs up for trying. He's not going away quietly. He's going to try something else. And gosh, it's maddening to watch these knuckleballers pitch and watch these guys flail around. And I hope it works. Hey, maybe it's a secret weapon as a pitcher for the Reds down the road. And we know how much pitching costs in today's game. So if you get a bargain like that, some dude that wants to throw knuckleballs and it works, give it a shot. It's in Double-A. It's not going to hurt anything.
Sure. We looked it up before the show started. R.A. Dickey, the last knuckleballer to win a Cy Young in 2012.
And that guy, he was in his late 30s, right? Or 30s.
Yeah, with the New York Mets, he came out of nowhere and flamed out almost as quickly. I don't think he was quite the same after that Cy Young award-winning season. People started to figure it out a little bit, but yeah, I mean, of course you're not going to blow out a rotator cuff when you're throwing the ball 58 miles an hour that's breaking everywhere.
Yeah, well, you had Phil Niekro was the all-time best, but you had Wilbur Wood. I remember Wilbur Wood one time started both ends of a doubleheader for the White Sox as a knuckleball. I mean, they can do goofy stuff like that, You don't have to have a bullpen day if you got a knuckleballer around. If he pitched last night, he's ready to go the next day. It's really a strange thing, but there's been a lot of them that have been good. Hoyt Wilhelm. There's been some around. Tim Wakefield that had some success. But I'll tell you what, when they have an off night, God, do they get crushed. When that ball's not dancing, you in big trouble.
We'll see what happens for the not so young man, as there is a glut of inside infielders on this team, and there is no way he is going to be cracking into the bigs.
He would not have seen the light of day with the infielders on this squad.
Not a bit.
Nope.
But outside of that, George, unless you got anything else,
we're good, man. I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up another episode of George in the Jungle here on the Bearcat Journal Network. Again, thank you to Remington Tavern for sponsoring us. You can catch them at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140. They have daily happy hours from 3 to 7 p.m. and $5 Woodford Wednesdays. You can check them out on Instagram at RemyTav, REMITAV, Cincy with a Y, or follow them on Facebook. Till then, though, we will see you next week on Tuesday night at 9 o'clock. I don't believe there is not a game next week, so there shouldn't be anything impeding us from starting at our regular time. We'll see you then.
Thank you.